What's up, YouTube? This is Jay Moonies, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of Hyper Science with Dr. Strange. I started this series off in pre-release, kind of to build up hype for the character, but now that the game's been out for a couple weeks, I expect most of you will more or less be able to find out what you want to know in regards to the 7 Rings of Ragador. So this is my last episode, and I'm summing up all the loose ends I've pretty much collected up till now. Based on the first 3 episodes, it should be fairly easy for you to tell what kind of moves count as projectiles, seeing as how the 7 Rings of Ragador will counter any projectile from any direction, whether it be full screen, whether it be a wide spread, whether it be a barrage, whether it be a long-range grab, or a bunch of projectiles surrounding your opponent. The ones I'm showing off here are pretty much the straightforward and obvious moves you should be watching out for, specials and hypers included. What we've also learned from the first 3 episodes is also that you can use the invincibility frames of the 7 rings to cause one-hit hyper combos or single-hit activation hyper combos to whiff. Of course, these should not be used without a DHC ready, seeing as how the opponent will more often than not recover from their hyper combo before the 7 rings finish their animation sequence. I thought I'd highlight a few moves which may be easily mistaken as projectiles. The funny thing about the normals and certain various other moves is, despite whether they can destroy projectiles or attack from range or have elemental effects, some of them still go through the 7 rings and won't be counterable. You could see here zombies, even though they're thrown, do not count as projectiles. And shockingly, Gustav Fire is also not a projectile, even though the flamethrower from Chris is. Additionally, Viper's hyper combo there will still hit you, even though Seismic Hammer and EX Seismo will still be countered with the 7 rings. So the main reason I started this series is because even though it seems fairly obvious what would be considered a projectile and what wouldn't be, there's still a lot of room for doubt, especially due to the visual elements of these moves. But now here I'm featuring a lot of moves I didn't expect to work. A lot of these were actually normals, which is kind of interesting. A lot of normals and a lot of, I guess, special moves which would only hit in melee range. It's kind of interesting that those are mixed in. Crouching mediums, crouching heavies, forward heavies, back heavies. Viper's Fire Kick, certain moves that allow for mobility, like Spencer's Grapple Zip and Spider-Man's Web Throw as well. Even some moves that do cross-ups, which I thought were physical, like Zero and Virgil's moves, also seem punishable. As well as Maximum Virgil, as you can see here, which also tracks in the air. In addition to damage dealers, you also run into a couple odd ones. Frank West's Camera Flash being one of them, and even King Surfbot, even though it looks like it should be completely physical, does seem to do projectile damage. Felicia's Help Me, it seems like a grab move, but is actually a projectile as well. And even though Senko's little hammer thing will hit you from melee range, if you step back and get hit by the balls, it will also trigger the 7 rings counter as well. And interestingly enough, the Ant-Man hyper. So you can see a lot of moves that you might think are grabs actually are single hit projectiles that trigger into cinematic moves. One thing I wanted to touch on, because I haven't yet, is the concept of delayed special exploits. Particularly explosive attacks kind of give you the option to use that opportunity to shoot a beam. The scenarios in which you would use this, I guess, would be fairly limited, but I find it's worth keeping track of, especially for timed bombs, because the opposition would typically take this as an advantage to rush in which case your invincibility frames would be enough to dodge any physical attacks, and once the explosions go off, you'll counter with a beam. One interesting thing I wanted to note was Mystic Stare, which leaves a bunch of exploding eyes on you. You could still time that explosion out as well, so I thought that was worth knowing. And finally, a few side notes. Chris, when prone, can continue shooting bullets, which will trigger the 7 rings, but since he is prone, he will be the only character able to make a projectile attack and not get hit by the retaliation. And finally, Arthur's full screen move. Interestingly enough, both characters are invincible for the entire duration of that animation, so kind of trading out a level 3 for a level 1, so that's not bad either. But anyways, this has been the final episode of Hyper Science with Dr. Strange. I might take it a bit further with Taskmaster, but we'll see how things go in the future. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll stick around to watch some of my other stuff. Bye.